Look, I don't have to tell you, I don't want to take you to the birds and the bees about how dolls have sex and procreate. But let me tell you, those brats you had as a kid,
them dolls be fucking.
them dolls be fucking. And then there's the queen brat.
Queen brat, played by Charlie XCX. Make sure we all have a brat summer. And by that, we mean eggs laid in your intestines.
Oh, God. She's always here.
Why are you here? Dr. Winkman.
Dr. Winkman, why are you came? Is that a hint?
No, it's not.
Is the great character actor Peter McNichol in your movie?
Is it a hint that we quoted a movie that we've already covered?
Well, maybe it was an allusion to Ghostbusters 1. Like, the exclusive Ghostbusters that character's not in.
Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good to begin with. My name is DJ.
I'm Damon. I am amazed that I'm constantly surprised when the show begins. You did the countdown, then I just start talking at you and wonder why you're not engaging with me. And then the minute I stop talking, you do the intro. I'm like, all right, because we're supposed to be recording this fucking podcast.
Because the truth is, we would be doing this maybe with less technology. Whether you listen or not, but we're so glad you're here, listener. I want to break precedent here. I don't know if this is possible, but I want to try something new.
Norm breaking, not a fan, but go ahead.
This requires maybe, is Tyler home?
No, he went shopping.
Okay. So I don't get it. So he is, okay.
He's really secretly cheating on me, but
well, that's,
I get angry when he goes shopping.
That's a given. Tyler be shopping. I've always said that in my 90s comedy set. I said, okay, well, I can't break precedent though. I will say that I do plan to break precedent with this movie choice a little bit because it is, as you know, spooky.
An art piece.
It is spooky.
Oh, it is spooky season. Yes. I know that because we filmed these mere hours before they're released online. So it is currently, for you and I, spooky season.
Spoopy.
Spoopy.
It is
spooky.
All live, no edits. I have never said in my life. I've never said like every word. I've never pissed off an editor or myself when I edit the episodes by how much I say those things. What I would like to do that breaks a little bit of precedent here is a movie that I think might actually be a little scary. I don't know to what degree. That's what I was seeking Tyler's expertise.
No, I already don't like this idea. I'm starting to bite my nails like a cartoon character would, and then I go a ding and I do a typewriter back because that's how scared I am.
We are notoriously scaredy cats, but this movie it holds a outsized space in my memories.
Oh God.
It scared the ever-loving shit out of me.
No.
Kid. Partially, I don't know if I even watched it or it was just that. Here's what happened.
Oh God. You're not even going to tell me what the movie is. You're just going to keep launch into an anecdote. Go on.
When I was a little boy, I had a doll. That immediately gives it away. It was my buddy, and I'm just living my life with my buddy and me. Buddy. And it wasn't until my sister, the lovely Jennifer, the kindest, gentlest soul in the world, says to me, your stupid my buddy, little my buddy doll looks an awful lot like Chucky. And I said, does he? Somehow my 6-7-year-old brain did not put that together until then, even though it's very clearly based on that doll. And then I was terrified of my buddy for the rest of my life. We had, you know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Child's Play Chucky. Yeah.
Yeah. We're talking about Child's Play, 1988. And the doll comes to life and murders people mostly with a knife, it seems like, but I'm sure he used multiple methods.
He seems creative. So he's always, whenever I see him, he's doing wisecracks. So I feel like he'd find innovative ways to push the murder envelope.
So it began with me just being scared of the doll and couldn't.
Had you seen Child's Play?
I don't know if I ever
Just the very
actually-
idea that she
Yeah.
compared these two objects, you were like, I'm out.
I can see that like maybe that was a thing that somebody in my house was watching and I might have like been like, no thanks. But it like kind of saw part of it or something like that. I don't know.
Somebody in my house was watching.
Like my
It
parents.
just makes, yeah.
My parents. And then
It seems logical. One of the family members in your home.
not like a ghost, like a
You're not working at a bed and breakfast.
That's just I got nervous when you called out on what I said. I don't know what you want from me. So I then was having trouble falling asleep because my buddy was around. At one
Because
point,
of the murder.
I had bunk beds at this point, and I would sleep on the top bunk. And my dad, at one point, trying to help, tried to have my buddy talk to me like I'm your friend. And of course, that backfired. That was
No, I feel like that's something that Chucky does right off the bat.
because now I'm thinking my doll is also alive, like the murdering one from the movie. So then instead of just immediately getting rid of it, they moved my buddy to the basement. So then I was scared to go to the basement.
Yeah.
And then eventually they did get rid of my buddy. So thanks to this movie and my sister, I'm scarred for life. I still remember that. It's now been many decades and I'm still thinking about it. So
Maybe you'll appreciate now with time, you'll appreciate the satire that the Chucky movies were doing to the My Buddy industrial system.
yeah, maybe.
Really shining a light. You know, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and they really wanted to show My Buddy was no good.
You're like, these dolls kill. Get real friends.
These dolls can house murderous souls. Go outside, meet some kids.
And get a kid sister. No, that's the same problem.
She's got yarn for hair. Well, I've never seen these movies, but ironically, I was talking with Tyler about movies I could potentially offer this podcast in a sacrificial way. And
Kneel to the altar.
And he did bring up Child's Play. I ultimately did not go with it. You did not steal this out from under me. Don't ever think that. But in response to your initial question, is this movie scary? Tyler did say that we could probably handle Child's Play.
I did a little bit of, and I didn't want to like give away too much to myself, but I did do a little bit of internet sleuthing, and I was like, I think we're going to be fine. Because I think it'll be a little bit scary. I think it'll be more jump scares than we like. However, I do think it's probably stupid. And so,
Yeah, it doesn't feel, just fucking kick the doll. You know, they're not heavy. How heavy was your My Buddy? It's probably hard to gauge since you would have been a kid carrying it around.
Yeah, it was 50 pounds. Unfortunately,
fucking ripped.
I would use it to bench.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the weird thing was that then you had to spot Buddy
Yeah,
at the gym. You're like, come on.
He can lift shit, I'll tell you that much. How much you bench?
Yeah.
Nothing? Okay, yeah, that's good.
Nothing because your arms are cotton? Get fucked, you buddy.
My little buddy. Kid sister.
I do. Well, this is unrelated. For a reason, I was going to talk about My Buddy, but we're not talking about My Buddy. We're talking about Chucky.
I feel like
Richardson.
we can talk about my
I really
buddy.
fucking hated the commercials for My Buddy and Kid Sister. The song was Rating. And I did get the sense. But keep in mind, this is coming from a kid who talked to himself as if he was hosting a show. When he was alone. And even I thought, come on, that's pathetic. Don't carry around a kid-sized doll, push him down the fucking slide. Come on, you look like an idiot. Then you're having tea with Kid Sister. Fuck off.
This might be I don't know what was, interesting to me because this may be the lady doth protest so much, but like I had friends, you know what I mean? Like,
no, keep telling yourself that you made your mom buy several My Buddies and you dyed their hair yourself.
All my friends are here laughing just out of frame. I do think the commercial, back to the commercial, I thought it was weird even as a kid because they would always show them together. So they'd hold the whole song, whatever, 30 seconds of my buddy, and then the song continues.
Oh, right. Yeah.
My buddy, a new doll from blah, 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 and then they tell you about the thing you're watching. And then it'd be like, my buddy and me. And then the song it was very clear, like an end spot.
Yeah.
Very quick fade to black. And then Kid Sister. We like, why don't you run those separately? Because it's very obvious when you run them as 1 minute, 60-second commercial that it's the same thing. You're just marketing to girls. It's very weird.
We talked to the intern about that, and Greg said he didn't want to do that because it took more time to look for 2 different spots, so he just bought the 2 spots together.
I'm not exporting them. It's 2 different files. It's the same thing. It's the same
files. You know, he had those reel-to-reel tapes that he had to deliver directly to the television station. They had a few fucking huge antenna to beam it out to your televisions with all the...
I already exported it to Betamax. It went out to all the stations. I'm not cutting the tape, okay?
The very idea. Files. Get out of here.
Okay, what? Now that I've been embarrassed, what is an embarrassing thing? Did you have any embarrassing doll or toy or thing?
Oh, I had so many dolls. I just never had humanoid dolls. And I had, in fact, one of those nets that you would put in the corner of your room.
Oh, yeah.
Fill with stuffed animals. So I had like a Roger Rabbit doll, a Kermit the Frog, a Care Bear or 2.
Arguably also humanoid, even though they're animals.
Right, I guess. Yeah, they are walking on all fours. And they have tattoos on their stomach that they use to, shoot beams of pure energy towards the sky.
Kermit, you mean?
Just like you and me. So, but I never played with I never had like a set of toys. I just like piecemeal plush animals. I tried to say stuffed animals, but then I decided to say plush, and then I tried to jam them together, and I realized I've never put those 2 words together before in my life. So what I would do, since they were all like different IP, as the kids would say, they ran a detective agency. Yeah. All these famous cartoon and Muppet characters. And there were villains. I can't remember who the villain was. I feel like I had a Kermit the Frog Muppet Babies specific Kermit, and then I had adult Kermit. Don't say adult, but standard Kermit.
Yeah.
And I think I made Baby Kermit like the evil villain who was like causing crime all over the city that they worked in. And it was just fun.
That is fun. I do think
I'll admit, since we all know you're lying, I did not have friends. So those were my friends, but we were really close. So
we've grown apart. I don't talk to him as much as I used to.
I still trust Kermit with my life. If he walked in the door right now, even though I haven't seen him for 15 years, I'd do whatever he said. I'd loan him whatever amount of money he needed.
He'd give you the weird green collar off his back, if you asked him to.
Is it a ruff, or is that part of your neck?
Part of you?
Now, here's a little fun fact about Chucky that I always like to employ. Chucky is played by Brad Dourif, who I think got a start on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But to you and me specifically, he's best known as Grima Wormtongue.
Well, he's also the doctor in Deadwood.
Oh, yeah. He's a very specific looking gentleman.
Yeah.
So he doesn't play a lot of handsome leads very often.
But he's the voice of Chucky?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
That's our guy.
We're going to watch Child's Play, even though we don't want to. Watch along with us. Be right back. Child's in charge of our dolls
and my play. When I want Child's in charge of me. I don't even remember.
And my death.
The theme? Specifically my death.
So this movie we just watched, it's scary.
Oh.
It was scary. You know what else is scary?
I bet you're about to tell me.
Leaving extra Your Inner Child's an Idiot episodes just out there that you're not listening to.
On the table. You're leaving the episodes on the table.
You're leaving them out there. You're refusing to claim them because you can't be a supporter. But guess what? You can be a supporter. Patreon.com/Your Inner Child's an Idiot. Let those fears wash away.
But the court said I couldn't be a supporter. Is that just for a specific thing to me?
That
thing I did?
You can't go anywhere near the supporters.
500 yards of
the
supporters.
As long as it's a fenced area, as long as you stay 15 feet back from that, I think you're okay.
And you can look me up on a map.
Patreon people, I got nothing.
Flawless. Patreon.com/Your Inner Child's an Idiot. Is that what you were looking for?
It was, and I ruined it. I messed it up.
That was maybe our most scattershot ad, and that comes in a long line of scattershot ads. We start with Charles in Charge. I went to alluding that I was some sort of sexual predator.
To
you
be
said
clear,
how scary it was?
You said that. I didn't go there.
I kept trying to work in on the table into the mix.
We're good
Who
at
wouldn't
this.
want to support this?
We're good at this.
We're good at
Why wouldn't
this.
you
We've
want
only done
more of this.
200 of these.
Yeah. We are back. We watched Child's Play 1988.
Thank you. I almost put on the 2019 version.
Don't yet,
you
at least.
dare. It's not respectful to the lore or something.
I'm gonna do some stretches, do a little synopsis since this is my choice.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like most of you know how this goes. At least the general beats of this.
Oh, Child's Play, or are you trying to do a synopsis?
Both. And they're both not great. Spoiler. There's a young child, Andy.
The titular child.
He's 6. Andy is obsessed with the good guys. He's the very obvious My Little Buddy analog. There's a show. He's wearing the clothing. He wants nothing but a good guy doll for his birthday. But at first he doesn't get it. Then his mom finds a way of by back alley peddler shopping to find a doll. Meanwhile, this doll has been through black magic, inhabited by the soul of a recent...
May have been to hell and back in a literal sense.
Yeah. Is now inhabited by a recently deceased serial killer by the name of Charles Lee Ray. Chucky, as he's known to his friends. And he is inhabiting this doll that Andy gets a hold of. And the doll comes to life and goes on a little spree. Kills Aunt Maggie. Tries to kill others. He kills his state's witness partner, Caputo.
Yeah.
Terrorizes the city, mostly this one family, but don't worry. Through the skilled machinations of Prince Humperdinck, an officer of the law played by Chris Sarandon, they eventually destroy Chucky. And he's gone for good, and he was never seen or heard from again, and they lived happily ever after.
And that is open and shut case.
Yeah.
We never saw Chucky again because we saw him burned alive.
Yep.
And that means he can't come back.
He already came back 3 times in this movie, so obviously he's not coming back in any other movies.
Mm-hmm.
I skipped a lot
like
of
in
things,
Halloween, she looks out the window, Michael Myers is on the ground. She looks over here, then she looks again, and he's gone. That's like, okay, sequel here.
Yeah.
Chucky, never coming back. He's going to be single for his entire life. He's never going to have any children. He's never going to have any cults about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He is donezo.
There's absolutely no way that he'll have children?
Look, I don't have to tell you, I don't want to take you to the birds and the bees about how dolls have sex and procreate. But let me tell you, those brats you had as a kid, they're disgusting.
Them dolls, I can tell you as...
they have been birthed from a larger brat.
Them dolls be fucking. I've been telling you about that.
Them dolls be fucking. And then there's the queen brat who lays all the brat eggs, and then they have to be inseminated by drone brats. And then the face hugger brats, I think, come out and they ram their ovipositor down your throat. Now, why there has to be 2 eggs in a brat creation, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never really picked up on that from the brat show and movie.
Right.
Even though there's so many of them. So,
well,
that's brats for you.
Queen Brat, played by Charlie XCX. Make sure we all have a brat summer. And by that, we mean eggs laid in your intestines.
Mm-hmm. Then they burst through your chest.
Yes.
Brat style.
Brat style. You know what I actually do appreciate on this watching is that there is some sense to the fact that through this black magic, which we'll get into that, but the Charles Lee Ray, Chucky, slowly becomes more human. And that's why his face starts to look different. He starts to have like a receding hairline. His like, that's when we start to get the puppetry. It like basically goes from creepy doll with like eyes that open and he says, "I'm Chucky, you want to play?" to like, he's actually animated in the fact that his mouth moves. And I appreciated that was actually explained.
That was your takeaway?
That is what happened.
No, I remember them saying that, and he talks about how he gets shot and he bleeds.
Yeah.
And the voodoo priest, a phrase I'd never thought I'd be saying, says, that's because you're becoming more human. But I didn't associate that with his actual face. I thought that they were just like, they were doing the Jaws thing where we never see Chucky talking aside from saying the doll's actual phrases. But then when he gets fucking pissed at Catherine Hicks, then he gets angry eyes like a Jeep Cherokee. And he, starts calling her a fucking slut. I thought it was just, well, now, now you made me upset, and you don't want to see Chucky very upset because his face slightly shifts.
I think you are explaining the meta reason, the actual reason why they did that is because when they went into the editing booth, they were like, okay, we gotta Jaws this. We're seeing too much Chucky. And then apparently they did a lot of edits. And I think at some point, Tom Holland, not that one, the director,
different
one. I think he left the project. I read something about that where he was like so mad at the edits that he's like, fuck this, I'm out. And they were like, that's fine. We're good. And
we'll just finish it up from here. You've done all the shooting and the what have you.
Yeah. It turns out we don't need you at all at this point. And I think part of that was like, it became less scary because you saw too much, which is what happened. I haven't seen.
You mean at the beginning there was going to be more of Chucky talking to the kid?
And kind of like I think this series, which I have not seen all the movies, but I do think it goes farther and farther into campiness, into like silly. And that's
probably the best thing for it, really.
Yeah, exactly. Not that this isn't silly, but it is like trying to ratchet up the tension, I think, in its initial proceedings.
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the movie, but I did like the idea of like withholding Chucky up until that turning point when Catherine is alone with him. I thought that was a good choice. And
when he like skitters across the bathroom or the background.
Yeah, because, well, he's also played by a child, and a child running always puts me ill at ease. Just seeing, why are you going so fast? And your arms don't bend the way I feel like a human's arms should, little child. Yeah, they did it. I think they did a variety of tricks to bring our Chucko to life. I call him Chucko. And some were smaller actors in costumes, sometimes people in costume in a forced perspective, like in an enlarged space. Other times just straight up puppets. I
don't know if you know this, but that's how they made in Lord of the Rings. That's how they made it seem like the hobbits were very small.
No, I don't. Yeah. I'm not familiar.
They dressed them up
with
like
this. With this franchise you're talking.
So I was prepared to
be scared.
Either be scared. Well, I don't want to go that far into this yet, but like,
okay,
I was prepared to be immediately scared. But I think they did raise the tension pretty decently with that kind of stuff. Like the first time, like you obviously know Chucky's. You came to watch this movie, but
it's called Child's Play, and you saw a man in the first 5 minutes use a voodoo spell to put his soul into the doll. You know what's coming.
You know this is going to happen.
She saw Grima Wormtongue use magic to become a doll man.
Dolman.
Jonathon Dolman, the attorney at law.
When the kind of like, I would say the turning point of that happens is when like Karen, the mom, is like realizes that Chucky doesn't have batteries. And when she checks, okay, well, maybe there are extra batteries. She's like terrified, but then she goes and checks Chucky, his battery compartment, and it's empty. And then Chucky's head turns around and he says, "Want to play?" or something like that. And then she drops him, and then he ducks and rolls under the couch. That sequence.
That sequence was probably the best, most frightening sequence in it. In that I was I did my squirming, which Tyler, I think, secretly enjoys, where I'm just sort of rolling around on the couch, sort of tucking my various body parts, not my seeing body parts, but legs and limbs usually, or chest behind pillows to protect me from the doll in the movie. And so that it was effective in that regard, that sequence.
Absolutely.
Now, if we want to go into the plot of the movie, what I didn't expect is the amount of whodunit was going to be involved in this, and how much police procedural was going to be involved, and
because we know
that it sort of becomes Kill Bill for Chucky, where he's just got a list of people that he's like, I just need to kill these 3 people. I just need to close the books on these, and then I'll be out of your hair, ma'am. once I inhabit the soul of your child.
If I could do a quick bit of, I don't want to call it serial killing, but several killings in a row with a pattern.
I like to think of it as cleanup. You know, I don't like any loose ends, much like our Prince Humperdinck, Lieutenant Prince Humperdinck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was put off by this, that he's called the Strangler. Charles Lee Ray is known as the Strangler.
Yes.
He's named after some of your favorite assassins and cult leaders, Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and, of course, James Earl Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Great guys, worthy of having a pop culture character named after them. Yeah. He's a strangler, so you assume he's a serial killer, yet he has an accomplice that drives the van for him. Well, you don't usually encounter serial killers that got people working for him. I guess maybe to buy all the rope, maybe to hold people down. Just doing the drive-in. I don't ask any questions of Mr. Ray. I'm just driving the van.
This isn't funny, but apparently it's based on there were like killers that worked together.
I did also see that, but I didn't want that to impede me complaining about them having accomplices.
Apparently that happens.
Yeah, there were stranglers, I think, in Los Angeles area, that there were two guys. But this guy seemed very ancillary.
I'm just saying, it's good to see, people have friends, even if they're psychopaths.
True. It's lonely out there as a serial killer.
I have a question.
I was also surprised by how involved the opening sequence was. It's a long shootout in a toy store with all the little buddies or whatever the hell they're called, good guys in this, all over the place. And then we actually see him do the voodoo trick. Yeah. I just figured the movie would be like, nah, you get you've seen this before when people transpose their souls into dolls. But it really lets me know, sort of takes the mystery out of, voodoo spells.
Yeah, I mean, it did kind of come out of nowhere in the beginning, like, because unless I missed it, but it's just sort of like, we got the Strangler. They're like immediately chasing him at the very beginning of the movie. They chase him into this toy store, and then all of a sudden, like, there's like a lightning storm, and he's like doing a spell, which is,
I think the spell triggers the lightning storm.
Oh, okay.
It's a Ghostbusters type deal.
Sure. That makes sense. But it just
does make sense. You're absolutely right.
I don't know how else to like smoothly get into that, but I thought it was kind of weird. And I guess we get enough of an I'm not, of all the things in this movie, like that this particular serial killer practices
voodoo,
some sort of
and has a mentor, a voodoo mentor,
Dr.
who
Death,
he also
John.
has to kill.
I was upset that his name was John, even though he had a nickname, Dr. Death. I just really like that he's like, John, you betrayed me. You didn't tell me I'd be stuck in this hell body. And he's like, what? He's just like cooking some rice. Like, what? He seems fine. Like he's cool, man.
Nonplussed or plussed. I can never remember which one's which.
I actually don't know. Let me ask you a question though.
Yes, please. Always.
Obviously terrified me as a child. The doll is very scary. Do you think we'd see a whole completely different Child's Play universe if it had actually been the full-size good guy in a mascot costume from the TV show that was possessed?
I actually wanted to see more of this TV show.
It looks deranged.
It was deranged, but also very familiar as an 80s kid.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, this looks pretty close, as off the wall as it is. This looks pretty accurate.
Yo Gabba Gabba, like,
well, I'm just thinking of like
Street.
80s shows, like just like, HR Puffin stuff.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. What's Yo Gabba Gabba? I'm thinking
that's a Nickelodeon show from like, we were already teens, I think, when that was out.
HR Puffin stuff is the one I was thinking of. I knew it was some nonsense name. Get out of here.
But I'm not angry at you. You're the one who
Stop correcting me.
Wrong.
Stop correcting me when I'm absolutely incorrect.
And I was the one that brought up the fact that I was wrong. But yeah, I wanted a little bit more because, of course, we talked in the intro that Chucky's based off of My Buddy. Huh?
Because then I don't have to watch this actual movie.
But we also see, there's a whole toy line. Chucky is involved with tools in some way. He maybe is like a Bob the Builder, proto Bob the Builder, because he's got tools, some of which he uses to murder. He's got a tree house that he's sort of in his logo, he's like popping his little arm out over the treehouse window.
Yeah.
And then we see him hanging out in a romper room style show with this guy in a giant, like Mickey at Disney World style, like costume with a giant Chucky head. And I kind of just went like, what is Chucky like when he's not possessed by a serial killer? What is Chucky to the rest of the world? That's what I was kind of curious about.
He's the new hot thing. He's the Tickle Me Elmo of 1988.
And he's using hammers. His shoes have hammers on them and guns.
Was it a gun or a drill?
I thought the Prince Humperdinck on the case, he looked at the little shoes and said, "Oh, there's a what did he say? A hammer? There's a gun?" I was like, "What do you do, Chucky? What is it that you do? You had all summer to figure out what you do, Chucky." I also want to say, before we leave the voodoo priest,
you want to go to the problematic order to talk about that?
I think so. I think we have to go.
Let's go.
Ooh, watch out now, y'all. Damon's got a problem, baby. Ooh, watch out now, y'all. Let him know about it.
I just want to come in like Conan O'Brien dancing to the music, and then we discuss the most racist problematic elements of this movie.
I think not, since we watched Adventures in Babysitting, which is a movie where every person of color is either a car thief or a literal blues musician. Have we seen such racism in a movie? Every person of color in this movie is a homeless person or a voodoo priest.
Yeah, it's not great.
The voodoo priest seems kind of nice.
He seems like
in terms of like voodoo priests that we've seen in other movies. I'd put him. This is the one I'd want to have a beer with.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because Chucky goes to terrorize John at some point, and the way that he eventually threatens him and then kills him is by having a voodoo doll likeness,
sort of,
which I'm not sure why John had a likeness of himself there. That seems like something you would make if you were trying to do this to someone.
Right.
And of course, he breaks his leg and then breaks his arm, and he stabs the doll, which makes him get stabbed. And then, but it is probably the only scenario where you hold up a doll, an effigy of someone, and they immediately go like, "Oh, don't do it, man." Because I feel like if I came to you and I just held up a doll,
and I'd be like, "I have more hair than that."
You would go, "Is that me?"
That's so sweet.
Did you have it 3D printed?
But you do also get the visual of a doll holding a doll.
That is true.
Double doll.
Double doll. The original name of the game show with kids, but then they changed Double Dare.
When Roald Dahl was trying to sell himself as a game show host. I've got a wonderful idea. It's based on anti-Semitism and a chocolate factory.
Yeah, I don't have a super deep analysis of it because it's not deep. It's just like it's the magical N-word, for a lack of better word.
It did feel like they had sort of painted themselves in the corner in that I feel like the mistake of this movie, or one of its mistakes, is that they felt the need to explain it to me. You don't really have to explain the ins and outs of the magical doll thing. Like, how did this happen? I feel like they could have been a lot more cursory about it and just have him die next to the doll would be enough for me. I know what you're trying to get at, but I feel like once they got the voodoo involved, we're like, well, now we have to explain how he got involved in voodoo. I know Dr. John will be around, and he'll go bother him, and then there'll be voodoo dolls. And
just to be clear, this is not Dr. John. His name is John, Dr. Death.
Oh, sorry. Dr. John is my father.
He sings I Go, and has a great time.
I don't know. It just reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan, his later output. He's always trying to explain these sort of magical things in his movies. Did you ever see Old? No. Yes. Old.
No.
That one is about a beach that makes people age really fast. And it's fine.
Got it.
But at the end, there's like a 15-minute explanation that a pharmaceutical company is using the beach to test their pharmaceuticals so that they can see what the effects are on drugs over long periods of time. I'm like, M. Night, you don't have to do this.
I feel like most of the time we're making the opposite claim where we're like, you give me a sentence. And this is the overcorrection version of that, where you're like, It's the flop sweaty, like, and then there's a doctor, and then he went to him before because he wanted to keep living longer, forever, and then the doctor's like, here's how you do that, but the only thing and you're like, yeah, it's okay.
Got it. Thank
Listen,
you.
The basic understanding that you need to have as a viewer, as the maker of this, is that it's stupid. So spend a little bit of time just to make your world make sense, but don't spend too much time because remember, it's stupid.
We're all just trying to have fun. We don't have to, have a bunch of white people explaining voodoo to us.
Although I do love that.
We can get it. Do you have anything else for the problematic corner? Sorry.
I mean,
aside from the slut shaming of Karen, of course. Don't call her a fucking slut. Chucky, just kill her without impugning her sex life.
Yeah. It's not really as misogynistic as this genre of movie can be. It's not bad, especially for like being 1980. And I think that's through omission, not through like they did the opposite or anything. They didn't like have these strong like.
Well, don't forget, written by a gay man, Don Mancini. And gay men can't be misogynistic.
Famously. All right, let's get out of this prop corn.
Prop corn!
Now, y'all. Let them know about it.
I'm not actually doing a song. I'm just doing the game from Mario 3.
Okay, do you want to talk about Chucky the doll a little bit more? So
always.
I mean, it's the main thing. It's the main draw. That's why we're here. So, like, how did you feel about, like, we talked about, like...
Show us on the doll how you felt about the other doll.
The doll. I was creeped out by all of it, but, like, I can't decide what's scarier. The, like, normal doll face where, it just kind of blinks its eyes and just has those, like, rote phrases and then all of a sudden says, wanna play? And then, or the Chucky with, like, the Chucky voice, the bad Brad Dourif voice and, like, the angry eyes. Because I think the contrast is also creepy. Like having both. Again, I wonder underline, not to give the movie too much credit, but the like becoming more human thing that like made this all like glue together a little bit in a way that I didn't expect it to.
I do like the comparison between the two. I found a latter day Chucky.
Mm-hmm.
He was a little too. I don't know. He wasn't working for me in the terms of he was a little too, he was always a little stiff. I don't want to like be too mean to it. I mean, they did, some really cool tricks, but when he is still in good boy doll form, I find him very creepy. I've never really liked those dolls. I had a Teddy Ruxpin and it bothered me that his mouth didn't sync up with the words he was saying.
Yeah.
It's just flapping at a specific rate. And I'm like, this is uncomfortable. But I did like that Chucky, good boy Chucky, he does the half lid trick a lot, which I love. When he is watching the news, he catches news about his accomplice.
Yeah.
And he turns his head to watch the news, and then Andy goes, Chucky, you're not even listening. And he does like the classic cartoon, like half lid eyes, and then turns back to the boy like, oh, I gotta keep going through this shit. Which I thought was just visually funny. Imagine if you were sowing your otes, strangling, presumably women.
Just sat there strangling.
And now you gotta pretend to be some kid's doll.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, like, because that's why it made a little bit of I'm hammering on this a little bit too much. Like this is like a.
I still even dispute that this is what the movie was talking about with him becoming more human. But go ahead.
Like the Citizen Kane of horror movies or something. But like the fact that he like couldn't, it's not just that he was got into this doll's body, got sold to a mother in an alley, got brought home to a 6-year-old, and then was like, I know how to sell this. But he like actually couldn't. He was like growing into his powers basically of being an alive and animated doll. And that's why you could like whisper. That all like made this creepier to me and made more sense to me than just like he all of a sudden was like, play it cool, Chucky, and didn't just immediately.
But like that first night, he's already running around and like pushing chairs around, and it doesn't seem like he's like. I feel like he's laying low in those first scenes.
But
then
why did he stay in the box?
Great question. I actually have a lot of questions about Chucky's motives in this fucking movie. Thank you for bringing it up.
Let's get into it.
So in his first kill is Aunt Empty Nest. Aunt Maggie, played by, I want to get her name, but she is an Empty Nest. That's how I recognize her.
Dina Manoff.
Yes. She's the older, more straight-laced sister to Christy McNichol's more devil may care sister. I don't really remember Empty Nest all that well. But she plays Aunt Maggie, and she's babysitting Andy on the first night that he has Chucky.
It's going to be the hottest date I've had in months.
I think I dated that street peddler for a while. She was not a 1930s reporter. I don't know why I'm doing that voice. But and maybe this fits in with your theory. Maybe you have the correct read on this. But he gets out of Andy's bed, runs fairly capably across to the front door, pushes a chair slowly, quiet, makes a little bit of noise over to the door, and then doesn't leave the apartment. What was the point of pushing a chair all the way to the door? And Tyler was like, oh, he was probably trying to unlock the latch.
Yeah.
And maybe he didn't completely unlock it, but it seemed like Maggie had to close the door again. Doesn't she?
I thought that like whatever he was doing, and presumably unlatching the door, this is my headcanon. I do agree. I do agree that I don't think it's explained super well what he was doing or like shown. I think he was trying to get out, but he had to like physically what he would have had to do is like put the chair up against the door, all this quietly enough that Aunt Maggie doesn't catch him, unlock the door, move the chair away so that he can open the door. Right. We know exterior doors don't open out.
That's settled. What I like about the movie, that question, can you open the door when something's in front of it? That's answered in the third act. That's called Chekhov's something's in front of the door.
And so what happened is he heard her coming, and so he just like hides.
Okay. And then he knocks over the flower, stands on the counter, and then bashes her skull in with a hammer so that she falls through the thinnest glass in Chicago.
I mean, that first kill is look, he might have already, like, she might have eventually died from the plastic hammer to the face. Because it did go into her face.
Yeah, it did go in. But he's got good, I mean, for mostly being stuffing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the biology of a Chucky doll works.
Yeah. Since
he doesn't have any bone structure. It's just stuffing and then well-placed seams, I assume.
Fold. To
create an elbow. But he's got an arm to push a presumably toy hammer into a woman's skull.
But then she just like flails herself out. She does not even fall out of the window. She like pushes herself out of the window.
And it falls on a car so hard, she crushes the roof.
I was like, it's not her fault. I'm not victim blaming here.
Please.
That death is 75% on Aunt Maggie. I'm sorry.
Well, there's flour on the floor. You know that can create a lot of slickness. I mean, that's not the word.
Created a quick roux with the water content.
Well, that would thicken her fall.
That's true. Yeah, you should gum it up.
It's like think it through.
I
was surprised he was even bothering killing anyone at that point.
Yeah,
what's your game plan, Chucko?
Yeah, so again, headcanon, I was under the impression that like he was trying to use the kid because he couldn't do everything on his own. Mm-hmm. That's what
like the trash can guy on Sesame Street when he carries Oscar.
Actually, a lot like that.
Even size-wise, it's actually pretty accurate.
Even there's like, I know he's not a puppet, but it's it's not 1-to-1, but it's very similar to that scenario. And Oscar's like, put me down anywhere. It's like, do you work for Oscar?
Why can't Oscar get out of the can?
The garbage man doesn't work for the garbage.
You raise some great questions, but we're not here to discuss Sesame Street, early seasons of Sesame Street. Oh, hold on. I want to remember what that guy's, garbage man?
His name was Rick, you fucking asshole.
I feel like it's Carl.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bruno. Sorry, Bruno. I wanted to call him Bert, but I was like, no, it's definitely not Bert. We already have a famous, some would say infamous, Muppet named Bert. I think this leads into my main problem with this movie is that I kind of stick a pin in that because I'd like to return over to Andy, who is like trying to decipher the fucking cuneiform tablets. I don't like closed captions on. I had to turn on closed captions for this because Andy is like, all his dialogue is like from under a pillow. I can barely hear him. I was about to turn it up and I noticed our television was at 40 volume already just to understand this little kid.
I'm sorry they couldn't bring 6-year-old actor Alex Vincent in for ADR. Jesus Christ.
Why not? What's he doing? Going to school? Get him some tutors.
Some elocution teachers.
He is a cute kid.
Yeah,
but I did not appreciate his ability to enunciate. You want to hit the cheap seats, Andy.
Yeah.
You want to be able to hear you in the back of the Globe Theater, you son of a bitch.
Lay to the balcony, Andy. Sorry, I interrupted you with...
What was I going to... Oh, I was just going to complain. I was kind of hoping, or I assumed, based on the setup of the initial part of the movie, that it was going to be about Chucky driving a wedge between Andy and all these other people around him. What it turns into is, hey, Andy, can you drive me to my accomplice's house so I can blow it up? Hey, Andy. And then the movie's like, oh, God, Andy, let's just send him to an institution for Act 2 so we can get some shit done in terms of figuring out the mystery of Chucky. I'm like, no one cares. What is this movie about?
Yeah, and it does kind of turn on a dime for Andy as well, because Andy kind of doesn't see... He hears Chucky say bad things, but he's kind of like still in his like... He's pretending to be like he's saying bad things to Andy, but it's like as my buddy, as like good guy.
He calls Aunt Maggie, who after she had died, called her a bitch who deserved to die or something like that.
Yeah, but Alex is just kind of like, yeah, man, Chucky's kind of messed up, isn't he? Like, and then of course, reasonably, the adults are like, okay, clearly there's something wrong with this child because this doll is not talking. But at some point, Andy gets sent to like a mental hospital, like institution where there are literal bars on the wall, and then he sees Chucky coming, and he's all of a sudden scared. Which we as the audience, it makes sense, but Andy has he seen him?
I'll push back in that when he's being interrogated by the police, he does say an interesting line, which sort of throws the whole first act into a new light, and not in a necessarily good way. He says, when Catherine's sort of like, you have to stop. No one believes you about Chucky. You have to stop saying this. And he's like, you don't understand. Chucky told me I can't tell anyone or he'll kill me. And first off, I was like, well, you've been doing a terrible job of not telling anyone that Chucky can talk, because you've been telling fucking everyone in this movie that Chucky talks. So he has every right, per the agreement you have with Chucky, to kill you.
Yeah.
And then it also like colors everything we've seen before, because Andy has been very like doting and like lovey towards Chucky. And now there's this new thing where the movie has not shown us that there may be like a more abusive nature to their relationship. But everything we've seen, even when they're alone together, has been, hey, Chucky, sit on this rocking chair while I go pee in this garbage dump. It's been very like sweet, kid stuff. So this idea that actually Chucky's been threatening him and he's actually scared of Chucky is not borne out by the movie we've been watching together with Andy and Chucky in it.
Yeah, there's two things that also kind of confuse all of that issue for me. Like, one of them is I read later, so it's not really the movie's fault, but that like at some point they had said that Chucky's like, it's your, like, his dad is apparently dead and had died fairly recently. And Chucky says something like, finds out by like looking at photos or some context clues. And it's basically like, it's your fault. Your dad is dead. And then if you don't do what I say, something, but also in the first scene where I think it's the first scene where Andy's saying like, Chucky's talking to me and he's saying this, he's like, he says his name is Charles Lee Ray and he goes by Chucky. And I'm like,
right.
I just watched that on the news. Didn't you? Like, we were in the same room, weren't we?
Yeah, I know. I feel, and it was playing on the goddamn news while Aunt Maggie was sitting there.
Yeah.
And I feel like if there was a notorious serial killer that they had a name for and there was a manhunt for, I feel like you'd kind of know who it was.
Yeah.
That would ring a bell. And I feel like someone say it later and Catherine Hicks has no reaction to it.
Yeah. I feel like maybe this movie isn't totally above board, Damon.
It may not be doing the work that we're doing.
So, okay, I guess I'll give that Andy being scared when it comes from is okay. But
I mean, that was interesting. Like that I feel like hinted at a much more interesting premise. And I wish we could have seen a little bit more of that. I think every time this movie goes away from like the relationship of Andy and his mom and Chucky, I feel like that was a missed opportunity that could have been like the tension of the movie.
Yeah.
But the movie seems to be more interested in solving this mystery.
Police procedure,
and the idea
where we know all the answers already.
Right. Well, we have to watch him solve it. That reminds me, have you ever seen Predator 2?
At some point it did.
I remember watching it and I remember getting so mad because we already know what the Predator is. It's Predator 2. But the movie keeps like having like shots of the Predator, just like the first one, looking through his heat vision goggles, and everyone's like, what's going on? I'm like, it's a Predator.
Yeah.
We know what's going on. Stop acting like this. And the problem is like, there's no characters from the original movie in it, except for, I think Gary Busey shows up halfway near the end, but
as he always says,
dramatic irony doesn't work like this. You can't just keep dicking me around.
I saw a video recently that not to talk about a TikTok, but it was a Jason Pargan video where he's talking about like a lot of people who make sequels don't understand what worked about the original and how sometimes that's repeatable and other times it's like you have to find a new angle. And it's like what worked about the first one was the mystery of like, we don't know what this thing looks like. And, this thing. And then it's like, okay, that's not going to work because it's the same thing. The second movie.
It's just the Predator is back.
And that's the thing, like with this kind of movie, is it's like you take a known quantity, haunted murderous doll, and just put him in new environments where it's like he's chasing new people. There's no mystery. But like even in this, there is kind of a mystery, but we as the audience already know the answer. And that's okay. Like that can be.
You showed us the answer at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's an open book test at this point. We all know it's a haunted doll, and we have to wait while everyone's just like, I don't know.
Well, and that can be interesting, but like in the way that you described it, where it's like, okay, we're seeing it through the lens of this family dynamic that's already tense, or the kid she thinks he's lying to her, and there's this extra tension of like recently widowed and like the trauma of that, and there's like actually something deep there that absolutely not touched by this movie.
Yeah,
but,
I think that
there's something compelling there. It's just not explored at all.
Right. I think that the choice to like send Andy away in the halfway mark of the movie and he's just gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like that's the movie just even giving up on it's like, fuck it.
Yeah. Here's a doll. What about Officer Humperdinck? How do you feel about Officer Humperdinck?
I didn't mind him. I guess he seemed really put out by everything. He's almost. Yeah, I kind of was interested in that Karen's character, or Catherine Hicks's character, the mother, is very, she like actually hits the pavement and is like trying to solve what's going on. And she goes to try and find the street peddler who looks like the child snatcher from Magic Car. What's that fucking Magic Car? Rinky Dinky. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He's dressed like a lunatic. He
Herbie Fully Loaded.
And he does try to rape Catherine, the peddler.
Yeah.
Which is treated as, whoa, you get out of here, peddler.
Probably should put that in the old probcorn.
Probcorn. That was deserving of the probcorn. But the detective himself just seemed to be there. I didn't hate him. I didn't really have anything for him either. What about you? You seem to like him.
Well, I like Susan Sarandon, so I just naturally hate him.
You're right. I do like... Now, did you look this up? Because I am doing this from memory. They were married.
Yeah, and she just kept the name.
She just kept the name because she was already known.
They got divorced in like 79 or something, like a really long time.
It had to be, because even in Rocky Horror Picture Show, she's already Susan Sarandon.
Yeah. So I don't even know. Maybe they're dear friends. I don't know. I'm sure that we talked about this in Princess Bride because that's the only other movie I've ever seen him in.
He's also in Fright Night.
I have not seen that.
And he's also in an Alanis Morissette video, not from the famous album, the album after that.
Okay.
The one with Thank You on it.
Thank you.
But he's not in that music video. He's in a music video for a single you don't remember.
It's called You Shoulda Know. See, she found what worked in the original and tried to make a sequel. Yeah, he
is most famous for donating his last name to Susan Sarandon. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I also don't like this character, and I don't necessarily think it's the actor Chris Sarandon's fault, but like he obviously doesn't believe that this is a possessed killer dog. Why would you? As like assuming this takes place
to
in
the
our
character's
universe.
credit.
Yeah,
got it.
I believe that, but he also doesn't seem that interested in solving the actual mystery. He's like, yeah, it seems like this 6-year-old child murdered his aunt, and we're like, okay, well, so I think your premise is sound. Your theory of the case.
That is the exact conclusion I would come to if there was a boy, a doll, and a dead woman in an apartment. I'd be like, well, I can knock out the dead woman and the doll from killing her.
So kudos to you for putting that together. But then he's not even like, well, this case is wrapped up. He's kind of like, yeah. It's like all he's doing is saying, no, it's not the doll, because that's crazy to Karen. But he doesn't go like, well, we're working on the case. We can't really involve, a family member of the victim. And then they also question Andy, and it was actually his partner or whatever, but they're questioning Andy alone. And I'm like, that's definitely not legal. Like,
you mean the second time after the house explodes?
Oh, is that when they take him in?
Yeah, I want to talk about the murder scene after Aunt Maggie died, because you just reminded me how fucking insane it is. We are not cop lovers on this podcast, but if a woman has been thrown from a window, and then the only other person who was in the house was a 6-year-old boy, this is a murder scene. Catherine Hicks doesn't just get to dictate when all the police leave, because she's like, no, get out. And he's like, all right, well, will you call me if you notice anything strange? I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a live crime scene.
Don't you be dusting?
And now you're going to sleep in the house where your best friend just died?
Yeah. And she does not seem that upset.
She doesn't seem that upset. The kid doesn't seem bothered. And Prince Humperdinck seems to be fine, being like, I'll get back to that murder scene later, but I'm going to go back to my office now.
Yeah. It was a weird reaction, the whole thing. So you were talking about the explosion.
Well, I was just I wanted to talk about the murder scene, which is ludicrous. Okay. I mean, I am not an expert on police procedurals, but that didn't seem accurate. Now, we do find out Prince Humperdinck is warned by, I keep wanting to say Catherine Hicks, that the doll is alive and it's got a list of people that it's going to kill.
Yeah.
And Christopher is like, get out of here. I'm just going to get in my car. And not check the back seat, which he does, and is promptly strangled while he's driving by Chucky the doll.
Oh, yeah.
And like you would if you were being strangled, he hits the gas.
Well, I'm pretty sure Chucky cut his brakes, because he does touch the brakes.
Oh, that? Oh.
I don't know if he ever says that, but I'm like, that's the impression I got.
I kept seeing his foot sort of glide past the brake, and I kept being like, just hit the brake. And he kept, I feel like, hitting the gas.
Yeah.
And then then he's being stabbed from the butt. He's being stabbed from underneath, and he's got both of his legs up above.
I kind of like that scene. That is my nominee for the Sally Field.
It is absolutely ludicrous. And I was like, maybe this is a funny scene. It seemed
kind of both. It was kind of creepy.
I didn't think it was creepy. I thought it was just mostly dumb.
I think I
can't tell if it was being funny on purpose or in real.
I don't know if you do this. I know I've seen enough internet memes to know that other people do this too. But if you're in the basement and you turn off the light and then you try to run upstairs as fast as you can, you don't really think someone's after you, but you kind of. I do that when I take out the trash and it's really dark out and I just run back or whatever. That for some reason, him dodging knife things through the seat while trying to drive is I don't know. It's in that same realm where I'm actually dodging. I don't know. It just
pretending to dodge bullets as a kid.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's ludicrous, and then the premise, I alluded to this in the intro. He's a fucking doll. How much strength or weight can he have? Just lean forward and the doll comes with you if you're being strangled by a doll. It's all very, it's hard for me to get scared because it all seems so stupid.
Yeah, the physics of it start to really break down but like, I guess you could say, he is getting whatever strength he had as a man he's getting that.
So Chucky has the strength of a full-grown man.
Yes.
Who's got a keen eye for strangling.
Yeah, I mean, he is the strangler.
And then the car flips over, standard issue movie car, flips over on its roof. Everyone's fine inside. And Chris Sarandon, rather than getting out of the fucking car, decides to just start firing at various parts of his...
He can't get out.
I didn't get that feeling either because all the windows are busted open.
I think his seatbelt was, or something had him trapped.
Hey, movie, you need to explain these things. Because I just kept screaming, get out of the fucking car.
You could tell like these things where like you have to like make these headcanon edits to help. And then also a good sign, I learned this in taking like an online screenwriting course, is that if you see two people's names, if you see an ampersand together, that means like DJ and Damon wrote this together. But if you see the word and, that means that someone overwrote what they did. And so the screenwriter, and I wish I had written down who the writers were, but it was like writer, the word and, writer, a second and then so that means at least two major rewrites were enough for people to get credit. And I think that's always a good sign when they're like,
that's good.
This fucking.
I had trouble understanding because it seemed like Chucky was both on top of the car and then just running around the car like a Muslim on a pilgrimage, just running in circles around it. Like, what is he doing? Why is he doing this? What's the plan, Chuck?
Well, since this is like a horror film, whether it's actually scary or not, do you have a favorite kill? That's the thing. You rank the kills. Creative kills.
Thank you. I mean, Aunt Maggie's is funny because it's dumb. Enzo, or whatever the hell his name is, his accomplice, he gets the old I turned off your pilot light and your house is slowly filling with gas.
Classic.
That's rough. But we don't actually get to see him. And I'm also curious, how did Chucky get out? We don't see him get out.
He scampers.
He does scamper. With his little...
I gotta say though.
Who else gets killed? Oh, the doctor. Oh, the doctor's killed.
He gets shock treated in the face, and it's pretty Raiders of the Lost Arky. He gets like melted.
It does. It's probably the grossest of the kills. He starts bleeding from his eyes and his mouth.
Ugh.
I wish the one thing that is missing, what I like in horror movies, is like, and maybe this is what happens as horror series go on when you start to identify with the monster rather than the protagonist. Like you see that in Jason and later ones where they kind of give you a reason to hate everyone who's being killed.
Yeah.
And it felt like the doctor seemed like he could have been more elaborated upon to give us a reason to be like, yeah, give him shock treatment.
When you usually super want to kill all the like virgins, you're like these fucking, they're impure.
I want to kill all the virgins and I want to kill all the sluts.
You heard it here first, folks.
I just like them both dead.
I actually don't have anything else that's not.
In my ideal scenario, the final girl is a girl who only has sex in relationships after about 3 months.
Of marriage. Lawful, wedded.
Oh, sex after marriage? Well, I guess I'm the final one here at Camp Crystal Lake. Let me see my notes. Most of this may be staying in my final thoughts. My Springer's final thoughts.
I want to work the phrase, this isn't groceries, into regular everyday life. So
Tyler's favorite line was, gun jammed on ya? Which was the closest Chucky ever came to being funny, was when she's like firing a gun and she can't get a bullet out and he goes, gun jammed on ya? It's like, why are you being so taunting?
I was actually kind of surprised. I think some of the lines that I'm thinking of that Chucky says, or like that we see him say, are definitely from sequels. And I saw little bits or whatever, because he doesn't say that much.
He's not as, I mean, I think in the later series, he becomes much more of like a wry kind of anti-hero. Whereas in this, he just seems like a jerk.
It's not Durif doesn't get a lot to work with either. No one can see him Durif out.
Yeah. Save that for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
That's when you get to Durif out.
Do you want to scamper to the verdict?
Yeah, let's take our little padded feet and go over to the kitchen, spill some flour, and get our final thoughts in. Verdict. Why do I keep saying final thoughts like fucking Jerry Springer?
Damon, what did you think?
Your inner child is an idiot. This movie is dumb. There was only one moment when I was kind of scared when Maggie was looking around the dark apartment. I should have said this. Why didn't she just say, Andy, where is that you? Obviously, that's what you would do. You are alone in an apartment with a child. You would assume that the scampering isn't a third person. It's the kid. Anyway, I mentioned the racism, the deranged racism. I feel like this is an interesting premise. I mean, this is, of course, not the first living doll, haunted doll story. I mean, I think Don Mancini talks about being inspired by a Twilight Zone episode with a similar premise. The Living Doll, I believe it was called. There was also a Mystery Science Theater where a ventriloquist dummy came to life and was killing people. So it's not unusual. And I feel like I'm reading some of the history of the movie. It seems like some of the first drafts had interesting premises.
Yeah.
Like he was going to play into sort of the commercialism of like kids being advertised to directly, which you and I might not think is unusual, but to people in the 80s, that was a new thing of having kids just being directly advertised to, and having toy tie-ins with shows was a crass idea in the 80s that luckily died away, and we never did it again after that. And that seems like interesting. And I feel like this movie has flashes of that. I think a second draft was about, Andy processing his divorce, his parents' divorce, not his divorce. And,
Jesus Christ.
resenting his mother. And
never going to get laid again. That's it.
No one's going to want to be with a 6-year-old. Come on. I'm spoiled goods. But, the second draft, I think, was going to talk about like the tension between his mom and his resentment towards her. And Chucky is sort of a metaphor for that. That's not really in here either. It just sort of feels like haunted doll. We're doing that now. And I feel like there's a really missed opportunity, especially when in the second act, when Andy is just sort of put on ice for a bit so that we can hit the pavement and solve the case. And it feels a little silly. It doesn't feel very horror-like. And I feel like Chucky, as in his later iterations, would become much more interesting. Here he is not interesting, I don't think, outside of the more interesting premise of being a living doll. I'll also mention one too many times with the comeback on Chucky during the death scene.
Yeah,
I'm like, I get it. It felt a little bit more rip-off of Terminator, especially as his exoskeleton has been melted off and he's just got like metal bits and bobs moving around. What did you think?
Your inner child and your current child. No, your inner child is an idiot. Yeah, this is stupid. I was texting with my sister who brought this whole thing up originally. I mean, when we were children, not like for the podcast. And I was just texting with her. I told her, we were watching it, and she was like, "Uh-oh." And then I told her, I was like, "Is it because I'm in my 40s now, or is it because this is really stupid?" And she's like, "It's really stupid." And it was definitely not scary, but also not funny or interesting. It is a bad movie. It is absolutely, this is based on my little buddy. And apparently they never really quite recovered.
Like, oh, really?
From people associating. I don't think it's 1-to-1 because I think those kind of things have this like huge peak where they're like immensely popular and there's like millions and millions of dollars of advertising and then they kind of fall off. It could have happened anyway, but the fact that you base a horror franchise on this doll, I know from one little boy's experience, one little 6-year-old's experience, was not great for my my little buddy. But I had already bought it at that point, so they had my money. And by my money, I mean my parents' money.
Of course, Santa's money.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It was. I do think the beginning of it was a little. There was tension. I don't know if I'd call it like true scary. There's a couple like jump scary kind of things. And when he turns his head around, says "want to play," and then does the tuck and roll.
That was probably, I would vote that is the best scene.
Yeah, I think I would put that. Yeah, let's do that for the Sally Field Memorial Single Scene Award. Who's your Catherine O'Hara? I don't know if I have Catherine O'Hara.
I'm going to go with Catherine Hicks. I think she does an admirable job, and I think she's not as...
Her? No.
She's not as just screaming woman as you might expect in a horror movie from the 80s. I feel like she's actually doing the work. She's putting her time in to help her kid, and I think that's admirable. And I think largely the movie is from her perspective. So
yeah, I think so. I do wish,
and she doesn't care when her friend dies in her apartment.
Yeah, she's a tough nut
She's a tough
crack.
broad.
I do agree that there's more there if they had decided to explore it, and they didn't, and that's disappointing because I think they had an apt cast, they could have done it. Generally speaking, You're in a Child's Idiot. This is a bad movie. This is stupid. Don't watch this.
I feel like I get the impression that they lean into the campiness and the silliness in later versions, and it's much more of a horror comedy in the later ones.
Yeah. What do you think, everybody? Email us, yourinnerchildsidiot@gmail.com. You can text us or leave us voicemail, 615-576-0525. What?
I just remembered there is a funny line that Chucky actually says when that old couple is in the elevator with him and they're like, what an ugly doll. And then as the elevator goes up, he's like, fuck you.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I did like that.
He's so defensive about his doll body now. He really is becoming more like the doll.
Wait till you pull the patrons up.
Yeah, please. I still have Bruno, the garbage man on Sesame Street on my thing.
We want to thank our patrons for supporting the show, including Little Miss Chicken Nugget,
Just Cuz,
Lindsay, Halik,
the elusive Finn Gromkin,
Arnar, Damon's Australian accent,
David Mort.
I think you're rubbing off on me because that's terrible. That's even worse than my normal. Particle Man,
Bill Haynes,
Zesty,
Lindsay Nell,
dramatically plays hot dog,
Hizoner the Mayor,
Captain Jean-Luc Picard,
Josh Frigo,
Caroline Amberson,
Travis Vance,
Shit on the Cartouche,
T. Smith,
Dr. Malcolm's Heaving, Bosom,
Heather Tuggle,
Tommy Boy is Damon's favorite movie,
the supreme ruler of this podcast,
The Hands of Fate.
Jackson has an unhealthy obsession with me.
Jackson also is responsible for our problematic corner music. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackson.
Larissa Maestro,
Beth Sermont,
Jeremy Powlen,
Jonathan Day,
Karen Curd,
Zachary Hartley,
and Jody Passanisi. Thank you all very much for your support.
Thank
If you want
you.
support like them, patreon.com/You're in a Child with an Idiot. And we're going to go ahead and the next, I think, 6 months of episodes, just to kind of let you know what's coming up on the docket here. We're going to do the other Child's Play movies in every single episode for the next 6 months. So
great. We can see the evolution of Chucky. I can't wait to meet his wife and his kids and his cult.
this is like inevitable. You know how like there's other podcasts this has happened to. Keeping It 1600 becomes Pod Save America. This is obviously evolving into a Child's Play only podcast, and I think it was inevitable.
Right, because it was inevitable because we love this movie so much that we just decided to dump the premise and just do this now.
Bye.
Bye.